A reading from the Acts of the Apostles. They went through the regions of Phrygia and Galatia, having been forbidden by the Holy Spirit to speak the word in Asia. When they had come opposite Mysia, they attempted to go to Berea, but the Spirit of Jesus did not allow them. So passing by Mysia, they went down to Troas. During the night, Paul had a vision. There stood a man of Macedonia, pleading with him and saying, Come over to Macedonia and help us. When he had seen the vision, we immediately tried to cross over to Macedonia, being convinced that God had called us to proclaim the good news to them.
I'm interested that reading from the Acts of the Apostles includes a reference to Galatia in central Turkey or central Anatolia, which is one of the few Celtic places to actually be named in the Bible. Galatia was a Celtic region, and I suppose that's one of the reasons why this call to Paul to come over to Macedonia is reflected in St. Patrick's understanding of how he was called by the people in Ireland to come back to them where he had once been a slave, to come back to them and to preach the gospel. Patrick is not an Irishman. He was probably from somewhere in central or northern England, or from the west coast of what we now call the island of Britain. And he was called with a particular mission, to preach the gospel and to unite the church under him as a bishop. So, mission and unity are central all along in the story of the church, to our understanding of what it is to be the church in Ireland. And mission becomes a task immediately for the church in Ireland. If you think of Rathkeale or Columba, one of the three patron saints of Ireland, and his exile to Iona, and through that, Christianity is spread to Scotland and then spreads down through Lindisfarne to post-Roman Britain, through Irish monks or Irish educated monks and missionaries. Just think of Aden and Chad. And then later on, Irish missionaries bring Christianity to post-Roman Europe in the Dark Ages after the withdrawal of the Roman Empire. Just think of missionaries like Columbanus and Gaul and how they re-Christianize a Europe that had lost what it was to be Christian. So mission is central to the culture and the self-understanding of the church in Ireland. And later on, missionaries from the Society for the Propagation of the Gospel, SPG, the predecessor of USPG, gave a particular understanding of Anglicanism to the churches that they were most influential in shaping. Anglicanism in Canada, in South Africa, in Australia, while other missionaries from other mission agencies left their mark of a particular Irish interpretation of Anglicanism in countries like Kenya and Uganda. Irish missionaries are still held in very high regard in Ireland. They get generous public support. They're seen as people that we're proud of in Ireland. And they've worked all over the world. Parts of Africa, India, East Asia, Latin America. I seem to always encounter people who remember Irish missionaries no matter where I go in the world. But they've also had a very strong influence on Irish government policy. Their support for development programs have been very popularly supported by the Irish government and by Irish people. It's no wonder that Bob Geldof, who raised funds during the Ethiopian famine in the 1980s, was of course also from Ireland. And those values of Irish missionaries have also influenced Irish government policy, Irish foreign policy. Since Brexit, Ireland is the only English-speaking member state of the European Union. Ireland is one of the few non-NATO members of the European Union, and this shapes our foreign policy, which has got a lot of public support, so that missionary values are reflected in how foreign policy is worked out by our military spending, which is not on preparing for war, but is seen in the priorities of sending peacekeeping forces to Bosnia, to Central Africa, to the Middle East, to Cyprus. The main expenditure in our naval forces seems to be on sending naval vessels to the Mediterranean to pick up the lonely and the lost, the refugees and the asylum seekers who still find that they're being pushed back by Fortress Europe. I'm in one of the churches in my group of parishes, Holy Trinity Church in Rathkeale, where the window behind me is the sower and the seed. It so often reminds me of the very central mission of the people who established the Society for the Propagation of the Gospel. But it's the work also of a very important stained glass studio called Túr Glynna, which takes its name from the Irish meaning the Tower of Glass, inspired by St. Patrick's idea in his writings of Christ being my high tower. So perhaps it might be a good idea to close with some words that are based on St. Patrick's breastplate.
Christ be beside me, Christ be before me, Christ be behind me, King of my heart. Christ be within me, Christ be below me, Christ be above me, never to part. Christ on my right hand, Christ on my left hand, Christ all around me, shield in the strife, Christ in my sleeping, Christ in my sitting, Christ in my rising, light of my life. Christ be in all hearts thinking about me, Christ be in all tongues telling of me, Christ be the vision in eyes that see me, in ears that hear me, Christ ever be.